Welcome to
Pajama Bible Stories, Pajama Bible Stories, Pajama Bible Stories. Thank you, Maria and Helena, for our intro.
Yeah, that's pretty great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm Father Nick. These are my kids,
Scotty
and
Eleni.
we're here again to talk about stories from the Bible in our pajamas. We're here with our stuffed animals, all sorts of stuffed animals. I think they're getting too many to name, so we're just going to move on. Today we are here to talk about the story of
David and Goliath.
the story of David and Goliath, which is one of my favorites. At some point in history, the Israelites had adopted a king, and that first king's name was Saul. And Saul got into a battle with the Philistines. And they were on opposite sides, right? They were on opposite sides. The Philistines were on one side, the Hebrews, the Israelites were on another side. The side of what? You know? These two big hills or mountains. And in between them was a valley. All right? So they could not attack each other. Do you know why?
Why?
Because if the Philistines wanted to fight and to go attack the Israelites, they would have to go down into the valley and then try to come up and fight uphill. But whoever has the higher ground would beat them down. And the same thing for the Israelites. If they tried to fight the Philistines, they would have to go all the way down in the valley and then try to fight uphill. And that wouldn't work. And they'd lose. So there was a stalemate. There was no one was willing to concede ground, and they were just there for days. Just, okay, who's going to fight who? Well, one way to solve that back then was to take two of your best warriors and have them fight head to head. Well, the Philistines had this warrior, and this warrior was so tall. He was super tall, and he was super big, and he was a giant, and his name was
Goliath.
Goliath. That's right. And he was intimidating, and he scared all of the Israelites. And they sent him into the valley, and they said, all right, we present our best warrior. Give us your best warrior, and you guys can fight. And whoever wins will win the battle. So what do you think all the Israelites were doing when this happened? They were like, oh, pick me. I want to go. I want to fight him. No, what were they like? Yeah, they didn't want to go. No one would go. No one would go and fight this giant Philistine named Goliath. And so Saul didn't know what to do. And he sent for people all over the camp to find somebody. And David had already done some pretty cool things in defending his sheep.
Like,
He fought off a lion while defending his sheep. He was a really brave kid. And that's what he was. He was a kid. He was like 12 years old or something like that.
I would not want to fight Goliath.
No. So he's told by God, you're going to fight this giant. And he goes and he meets with Saul, and Saul, you know what Saul does? Gives him all his armor. He says, here, put all this armor on. And they put all this armor on, and it's just too big. So he's got clunkety, 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 clunk. He's just too full. He's got a whole bunch. It's like you right now in this thing. It's just too big, isn't it? Yeah, it's just too big. It's perfect that you're in it. So can you move really easily with that? Can you move really easily with that on right now? No, your sleeves are too long. You're sitting on them. You goose. So he can't maneuver. So he says, I can't wear this. And he takes it all off and leaves it. And then he goes to the stream and he picks up a few rocks from the stream. Maybe, I don't know, I don't know. And he puts them, yeah, maybe. And he puts them in his pocket. So he goes down the valley. And as he's approaching Goliath starts making fun of him. And yelling at the Israelites and saying things like, you give me this guy? And he starts cursing God. He starts saying bad things about the God of the Israelites. So you have on one side, the Philistines are like, yeah, we got our guy. We got our soldier. He's going to beat you. You guys are sending a kid. Goliath's like, haha, you're sending a kid. The Israelites are like, oh, we're sending a kid. And and he's making fun of David. And David says, by the power of God, he's like, you're gonna fall. And he calls on God to help him. And so David's there, and Goliath is standing, towering over him. And that's when David reaches into his pocket, pulls out a stone, puts it in his sling, whips it around his head, lets go. It goes pop right into Goliath's head and knocks him down. And all of the army see this. On one side you have the Israelites, thank you. The Israelites are like, oh my gosh, wow. On the other side, our champions knocked down. They're in shock. And David goes, runs up, grabs this giant sword of Goliath's, pulls it out, and chops off Goliath's head. Game over. And all the Philistines freak out. And they run away. And all the Israelites realize that they had won, go down the valley, come back up the other side, and chase after the Philistines and capture and take them out. Yep. And they win the war because David beat Goliath. All right? Now this is what you need to know. David didn't beat Goliath. God did. And David knew that. David didn't go in there thinking he could do it all by himself, but he called on God to help him. Sometimes in our lives, there are things in front of us that are just so big, and we're not sure if we can do it. But with God's help, we can do things that we could never imagine. That's what I want you to know. I want you to know that David relies on God. And if you study who David is and how David is, David's not perfect. He's far from perfect, but he always goes back to God and always prays and asks God for help and forgiveness. And that's why David's pretty awesome. And that's why David was able to beat Goliath. Not because of anything he could do, but because he knew that God would help him through it. So next week, we're going to do the parable of the prodigal son, which you'll hear in church on Sunday.
And I have no idea what it is.
Now you'll find out.
And I have no idea.
Look in the part below for what pictures we need drawn by next week. And if you could get that by Wednesday, that would be great. Blessings, crosses. See ya!